Thank you so much, Peggy. Such an awesome start into this day with music, Denden War, and truly incredible to be here. Guys, today we have our first Digital China Day, which is a huge 12-hour event. We're going to talk about all things e-commerce. We're going to talk about all things digital marketing and Chinese consumers. Let me quickly introduce you the flow for the day. So our first session that is starting right now is on digital lifestyle in China, its innovations and trends. It's going to last for 2 hours. Then we're going to go into another session on Chinese consumers, another 2 hours. After that, we're moving on to the digital marketing. The session on digital marketing is 3 hours long, and we're going to discuss content. We're going to talk to some bloggers. We're going to discuss new tips on how to run digital marketing in China in 2021. The next session is on e-commerce and the new commerce in China, digital commerce, cross-border e-commerce. And finally, we're going to finish the day with a session on luxury and experiences. We are all super excited to have you today. Stick with us. 12 hours is a long time. Come in, come out. But it's an amazing lineup of people, and I'm super thrilled to have us all essentially on stage. For this session number 1 on China's digital lifestyle, innovations and trends, myself and Nishtha are going to be moderating the session. And you see the people on stage right now, Peggy, George, Alvin, Jan, Gang, Del Kai, and William. So these are our panelists and speakers for today. You also see Peggy having this phenomenal to join and essentially network with other Chinese
Is Ashley breaking up, or is that just me? Did Ashley break up? Or
yeah, for me as well, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, Ashley, I think you just broke up, so maybe you can announce the QR code one more time.
Sure. So what I was saying just now is that Peggy also has a beautiful QR code instead of her gorgeous picture for those of you that want to join the WeChat group and essentially network with other China watchers. Phenomenal.
If you don't know how to use the QR code, if you're already on WeChat, just DM me. My handle is Shanghai Peggy everywhere. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, where I blog, as well as WeChat, and then I will add you in manually. So if you don't know how to save the QR code and scan it in with your WeChat, or if you're not on WeChat, that's okay too. Just DM, follow all the speakers, follow all the mods with the green beanies on during the day. And what you'll be able to do is follow along with us whenever we speak, whenever we have a room that we host, you'll be notified via this app. We also have a calendar of China topic rooms that we're coordinating with over 700 people now that are living or working in China or working with Chinese companies with real life experience. When we'd all like to share that with you. And so all you have to do is follow us, hit our icon, our profile picture, hit follow, and hit the bell, most importantly, to be notified that we're here. And we'll reset the room every 15 minutes to welcome in new speakers or new attendees. We'll welcome everybody who's in Clubhouse as well with a few tips. And I see David Lee just joined us as well. So I'm going to bring him on to the stage. Back to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Peggy. And let me just quickly walk you through what to expect in the next 2 hours. So we will spend these 2 hours sharing stories and best practices from leading experts in the field on how to understand China's digital lifestyle innovations and trends in 2021. We have already switched off the raising hand function, and we actually are going to try something different because we expect a lot of people throughout the day. So if you would like to ask a question or to add on to conversation that we are having here on stage, you can tap onto your profile just as you're listening to us and essentially change the bio with a question or with the contribution. Yeah, would like to contribute. And Nishtha can explain a bit more about that.
Hello, 新年快乐. A very, very happy New Year to everybody. I guess it's the second day of the beautiful Chinese New Year. Thanks, everybody. I think the intro has been already shared. So we are kicking off now with the first session, which is all about China's digital transformation, lifestyle, innovation trends. But we'll try to keep it more in the present. So let's say in the last few weeks to a month or two and what's coming up. And as Ashley pointed out, we'll try to kickstart with the amazing speakers on the stage already. A warm welcome to William, Alvin, Yan, Ganglu. You can also click on their profiles to check them out. They also share a quick introduction. A quick intro about myself. You can check out the bio again for more. But I'm essentially an executive facilitator and leadership coach. And it's all about understanding that failures are okay. I'm all about, passionate about empowering our employees, our people around to experiment, to try and develop new products and new innovation. So that's very briefly, and we are here to share and facilitate insights from all of you in the audience as well. So 10 o'clock, we'll open up the floor for Q&A with the audience. For now, I would like to have our amazing speakers to share very quickly what, in a very simple story format, what's your name, 3 keywords that describes your expertise in the industry, and what is your biggest source of strength working in China innovation. So instead of a full bio, maybe we kickstart with Alvin. Alvin, 3 keywords, and what's your biggest source of strength in China innovation? Thank you so much.
Tough to be the first one. 3 keywords. I guess I've been in China a long time. I've been here since actually 1971, but I started working here again, coming back in 1994. So I've gone through multiple generations of technology evolution. From PC to mobile to what's coming up in the future with VR and AR. So I guess I've said more than 3 words. So.
And what's your story? What's your story in terms of your biggest strength and enabler in the China ecosystem?
I think my biggest enabler that keeps me staying here is that I really feel like China has the potential to regain its dominance in terms of becoming a world power again. And, I was born here, but, I've seen kind of the ups and downs of this country. And to see what it's done in terms of regaining its strength and its capabilities, internally and as a global nation. Really gives me strength to want to stay here and help grow the country and help bring in the technology into this market. So, to see that there's consistent, constant growth and adaptation of new technology is something that really excites me because I think compared to everywhere else or most places in the world, China is just moving so quickly, and whenever new things happen, they happen very, very fast, and they adapt very quickly to becoming part of common life, where in other parts of the world, it just takes a long time.
Amazing. So Alvin from HTC, thank you so much. We'll continue speaking to you briefly. Let's move on to Ganglu. Welcome, Ganglu from TechNote. What's your story and keywords?
Hi, my story. So first, I've been doing this like tech blogger thing for almost 10 years, watching Chinese like technology, how it goes. So my keywords, I don't know, probably sound amazing, unbelievable, and sometimes probably unusual as well. That's probably my 3 keywords. The reason I say that, just because I think as Evan said, if you are in China long enough, you see like 10 years ago, like personally 10 years ago, like I've been to like Silicon Valley or like 5 years ago. I've been to Silicon Valley almost every year and try to learn, everything happening in Silicon Valley, even like Israel. But if you look at like in the past 5 years, I think I haven't been to the US for probably 3 or 4 years. Then 5 years ago, if you heard like any tech companies or VCs, always they were telling you a story is, what I'm doing, at the startup, they always said, what I'm doing is like copy of something in Silicon Valley. And if you were pitching VC, and you always telling VC, what I'm doing is something from Silicon Valley, then VC kind of convinced because they thought, because there's something from Silicon Valley, which means it has been more or less, prove the business model or the idea or the product. But what happened in the past 5 years is you heard less and less, people telling about, this is a Silicon Valley thing, that everything is more like a Chinese thing. And I really see kind of the decoupling of innovation in the global market, because China has its own ecosystems. And also I think we learned something. Then I think the best part, or sometimes controversial as well, is we started with like micro innovation. So basically we copy the idea, but we kind of treat it. Then we turn it into a platform or even much bigger product or much bigger idea. Then it becomes a super app. And also the best part is, I think the people can quickly commercialize everything, then apply it to everywhere in the society, in every industry. So it's really amazing and beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have seen, I've been also seeing the journey of TechNode from a baby to a huge, big, giant, the best source of tech news in China. So thank you so much, Ganglu.
Thank you.
I would love to welcome William Baobin from China Accelerator and SOSV for a quick intro and a story, 3 keywords and your story, which enables you in the China ecosystem.
Sure.
William.
Thanks. So I guess it's a cross-border internet. So my name is William Babi. I've been doing tech investment almost 25 years. I'm a general partner at SOSV and MD of China Accelerator, the first accelerator to launch in China, first in Asia, a little over 10 years ago. So we help companies from around the world, mostly startups, enter China. We've also advised some companies like LinkedIn and Airbnb on their market entry. We're starting to help Chinese companies expand out of China. We invest, we accelerate, and working pretty heavily with multinationals. As well, bridging the gap between startups and innovation and large corporates, starting with multinationals like Unilever and J&J and AB InBev, but also starting to expand to China corporates. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, William. So what would you say, like in under a minute, your key enablers in the China ecosystem from your personal experience?
Yeah, so I think, China is the number 2 economy in the world, in some measures number 1. It's impossible to ignore, but it's also very difficult to compete in. So when we're working with large corporates, whether they be Chinese or global multinationals, they're seeing probably the most intense competition you can imagine. And before, China was about, I need to build everything myself. Now both Chinese corporates as well as global corporates are looking for outside innovation. They're looking for any type of advantage they can get because if you look at S&P 500, used to be the average company stayed on a S&P 500 list for like 30, 40 years. Now it's down to 12, 14 years. And one of the rise and especially the fall of companies is being driven by this intense competition, both within China, but starting to come out of China from rising Chinese companies.
Thank you, William. Let's welcome Yan, another fellow tech watcher and practitioner based in Shenzhen. Yan, your keywords and your story.
Thank you so much for organizing and for having me on this panel with these amazing people. Great to catch up with everyone. So my name is Jan. I've been in China since 2015, and I am also, let's say, in the startup / technology / cross-border field. And I think my story starts with the keyword community, because in the past, I still do it now, but in the past, it was really what kind of was just me, or when people thought of me, they thought of community, meaning that we build up one of the world's largest communities in China and in APAC as well, called Startup Grind. We basically, get a lot of great people, hosted a lot of events, and enable companies from overseas to learn more about China and the other way around as well. And so I'm very passionate about connecting people and about, bringing resources together. And, that kind of brings me also to that enabler, or to that another part of story, after 5 years, basically building communities and helping people to understand China and even Chinese companies to go overseas. Now what even makes some of my Chinese friends laugh is that, I'm the guy living in Shenzhen, and sometimes I even connect Chinese executives and Chinese people with one another and allowing them to do business with one another. And so, that sometimes when I mention this, some of my Chinese friends and partners, they think it's pretty funny. And so, I've been always in the startup world, and similar to William and others on this panel, really just trying to support companies grow and get access to resources.
Thank you so much, Jan. Let's welcome Dekai. Please share your keywords and your story. What's actually driving you to enable and being part of this amazing ecosystem?
Artificial intelligence, natural language processing, machine translation. My story begins almost 30 years ago when I was recruited from Berkeley, where I wrote my PhD. One of the earliest theses to argue for machine learning approaches to AI, natural language processing. And Hong Kong at that time was building the first research university in a Western international style, the University of Science and Technology. And we're looking for several hundred professors to come start the university. And China was, had no internet, was much less developed at the time, 30 years ago. And so having worked around the world already, even as a graduate student, I thought that this would be an interesting challenge. I always wanted to move around the world and help develop places. And we came to Hong Kong, where my department started the first internet service provider in the region. And we immediately started building connections with the entire world and with China. And we brought in the first PhD students. And we started to train students to understand the more modern technologies. I'll save other comments for later because this is only 1 minute.
Sure. Thank you so much. And our last guest speaker for now on the stage is David. Hi, David. I happened to work with David in the past on corporate innovation assignments. An amazing person running Shenzhen Innovation Lab. David, just under a minute, your keywords and your story.
Yeah, nice to be here. I came to China in 2003, and probably for the past 10 years, mostly working on understand how innovation happen in China, especially from the bottom up. So I guess the key word for me would be open, Shenzhen, and Shanzai.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, David. Great. Nishtha, shall we move on to the second question, talking about China's trends and what we have observed in the past very recent couple of days? Let's talk about 1 month, 30 days. What China trend or story has caught your attention or surprised you, and why? The last 30 days. Shall we start with Alvin again?
Having a first initial, I guess, of being an A. So actually, the trend I want to talk about is not necessarily something that's happening in China, but just happening this week globally, is the trend of corporations now investing in Bitcoin, which was actually very surprising to me, that CFOs of large public companies are actually putting their reserve current money into a very high fluctuating currency or vehicle. So that's something that actually I'd like to hear the feedback from other people as well. Later we can go into that. But I thought that was quite an interesting development this week.
That's awesome. Let's move on to Jan.
Yeah, I think we should probably talk, more about what's happening on Clubhouse. I know, there's been a lot of developments in China around this app, and of course, we all know kind of it has been already blocked in China to some extent. But I just think, in terms of, from my background, community background, and even just seeing how quickly this has become such an enormous topic, and how many people were kind of tweeting or Weiboing about it in China, how many people were even selling invites on sites like Taobao or Xianyu and other platforms just to get on. And, I of course spent a lot of time in some of the rooms where they were fully in Mandarin Chinese, and, some really incredible investors from China, early stage, late stage, even entrepreneurs who were basically joining this platform to join the conversation about technology, about investments, about, Silicon Valley, learning from Silicon Valley still, and stuff like that. So I think this is an incredible trend, in the past 30 days to see how people are really excited about new concepts in China. And, they definitely want to learn from each other, from different people across the world. They want to join the conversation. And I think this is a testament of the trend, another trend that, Chinese companies, Chinese startups, they want to go global more and more and more, because kind of fueling by the next generation and younger, let's say, companies, or even younger entrepreneurs that are much more open-minded in a sense. So I think this has been an incredible trend that we saw, and we should definitely talk more about that from the community as well as from the product perspective.
Gorgeous. Thank you, Jan. Kai, what about you? Last 30 days.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question originally.
So the question is, in the last 30 days, what China trend story has caught your attention or surprised you, and why?
I think similarly, the Clubhouse story has been really remarkable. The amount of energy that you see is representative not only of interest in, Clubhouse, but it's really representative of the incredibly fast adoption of new technology within China. I feel, there's such a huge difference in how quickly people adopt the digital ways of ordinary daily life and are willing to move past the traditional methods. And that's really something that's been remarkable. And people do this despite obstacles with invitations or with blocking that Jan mentioned. It's the energy level and the willingness to progress is really hard to describe. It's such it's such an interesting and remarkable thing that people can share information so quickly and move forward so quickly. It's not like what you see in many other regions in the world.
Thank you, Kai. Perfect. William.
Sure. So, this is a trend that we've been watching. It's not necessarily the 30 days, although we've seen some movement in the last 30 days. But in the past in China, what you saw is a pretty openness to allow entrepreneurs to innovate and generally speaking, the Chinese government a bit different than the U.S. and other governments in that they watch first and regulate later, as opposed to regulate first and then take a look. And except with there's some exceptions where people might be at risk or of harm or financial damage. And so what's happened is you don't have hundreds and hundreds of companies in China. In a space, pretty rapidly you get down to a few companies, maybe 5 or 10 leaders, and those companies have now over the last few years, broken down into 2 or 3 or 4 camps. Alibaba and Tencent camps being the leaders. And one of the biggest trends that I find quite interesting is the move by the government to put a thumb on the scale much more than before. And signal that they want more competition and that they're not so interested in, I wouldn't say monopoly, but maybe hegemony is a better word. Just a few players forcing 2 camps or 3 camps and precluding the companies underneath their umbrellas from working with the companies in the other camp. So it's still developing. Jack Ma was seen playing golf at some point, so I guess that's a good sign. But this trend has been playing out, especially since IPO of Ant Financial got blocked at the end of November, early December. So it's been a pretty exciting 2 months.
Wonderful, thank you, Gang.
Yeah, this probably happened starting for like last year. But I just in past 30 days, I met VCs or startups. I also probably is not really technology stuff. I would say something to do with retail. The trend I saw in past 30 days is in Chinese we call 国货运动. So basically it's like the movement of new Chinese brand. Just all of a sudden I saw so many startups or even like the corporates, they launched their own new brand in almost all industry, like perfume, like everything. I think for 2021 that's going to be very, very hard in this field. You're going to eat. It's like a coffee we used to only have like Starbucks. Now you see so many kind of Chinese brand. And like in every field, and you see like the Chinese brand, they can compete with the Western brands. That would be very interesting.
Absolutely, very interesting indeed. Later today in our luxury session in the evening, we are actually also going to talk about Chinese brands even entering luxury market. That's gorgeous. And let's wrap this round up with David.
Yeah, so for the last 30 days, well, probably in the past couple months, there's a surge of the interest on getting the people to the rural to look at the 3rd, 4th tier cities and also rural areas, not just in terms of the technology development and also entrepreneur opportunities.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, this is Peggy Liu, and I'm one of your hosts for today. I'm going to reset the room a little bit. Welcome again to all of our speakers, many of who I know personally, and they are a wealth of knowledge. So please do follow them by clicking on their icon, their profile picture, hit follow, and then the bell if you'd like to be notified when a room that they're speaking in takes place, when they hop on stage. Definitely follow with the bell any of the moderators here if you're interested in being notified about more China topic rooms. And we also have in the background a WeChat group that is starting to fill up. If you'd like to join, if you have WeChat and you'd like to join the community of over 700 people now on Clubhouse, that is coordinating in the background to share real life living and working experiences in mainland China with the West. Please do look at my profile picture. It has a QR code. All you have to do is, you probably know how to do this already, but download and scan that picture to join our group. We also are going to take a little bit of a pivot now, and we're going to let speakers answer a question, and then other speakers unmute yourself to popcorn some remarks to layer a little bit more depth onto each of the answers. And our co-hosts today are Ashley Dudarenok and also Nishtha Mehta. They're both here in China with me. I'm based in Shanghai, and we've got a wonderful 12-hour plus room that we've organized of different topics, as well as many, many, many speakers who will pop in and out during this very, very long marathon of tapping into digital China's latest trends. For those of you who are new to Clubhouse, welcome. This is the We the Future Club. You can also follow the club for more interesting rooms, not just China topic, but basically exponential, future-based thought leadership type of rooms. So with that, any other things? If you want to ask a question, feel free to DM me. The handle for all of those of you who are new to Clubhouse, all you have to do is click on somebody's bio, go to the bottom of their bio, and you'll see a Twitter or Instagram handle. For me, it's Shanghai Peggy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, WeChat. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can ask the question in the WeChat group that is starting to fill up in the background, or you can just DM Instagram and Twitter Shanghai Peggy, and I will give that to the moderators so they can lead the speakers through those questions. So back to you, Ashley.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it forward. Thank you so much, Peggy. And I was just waiting for your lovely music, but yeah,
there you go.
After 20 minutes. That's fine. So we will be opening up the floor for the audience to raise hands. It's exactly at 10 a.m. and we'll make it much broader so we can have a broader discussion. Just to kickstart the next chapter for the next 25 minutes, let's go deeper into China innovation and the China tech ecosystem, right? So China style innovation, there is so much debate we are hearing over the years. China can't innovate, or China is innovating, sense of competitiveness with other regions or other countries. And there's always this question popping up. What is exactly China style innovation? Really? Is it different? Is it the same? Is it different from Europe? I mean, there are people who ask, can we do comparison between China style innovation between US and China, or India and China, or Germany and China? Now, question to the speakers, how would you define China-style innovation? And any speaker who wants to build on can just unmute themselves after one speaker finishes and continue. We'd like to have a deeper discussion. What is China-style innovation in your mind, in your experience? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I guess I'll keep going first if you don't mind. I think China-style innovation has actually changed significantly over the last few decades. When it first started, it was really more about taking what was already in other countries and then making it cheaper, making it easier to build, adding some little features to it. But over the last, I think, 10 years or so, there started to be a lot more indigenous innovation. It used to be about technology transfer and then augmenting it or somehow improving it. Now we're also, and then it became more application-based innovation, taking the technology and using it in a different way than before. But over the last 5 to 10 years, China is now being seen as a place where brand new things are happening, and other people are from the West are actually copying back. So it's been a progress, a cycle, I guess.
Indigenous. That's any examples? Anybody wants to continue on that China style innovation?
Yeah, I think I can add something, maybe some examples even from Shenzhen here from the ground. So I think what Alvin just mentioned, it's totally true. I relate to that as well. Another thing is really the speed. And I think the speed is also driven by what even William touched on a little bit previously is the government, is the top-down approach. Because, whenever the Chinese government really decides that they want to innovate something, they want to, put electric vehicles on the roads, they, want to improve some sort of infrastructure or whatsoever, it basically happens relatively quickly. And, I saw it in front of my eyes in Shenzhen, because when I first got here in 2015, there wasn't many, let's say, electric taxis or, electric cars on the road back then. But now, with all the regulation and with all these kinds of initiatives, every single taxi is electric in Shenzhen. You cannot really see the combustion engine taxi anymore. At the same time, even the Uber-like services, Didi and others, they cannot really register any new vehicles unless they're electric to the fleets, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think another part of Chinese, let's say, innovation, or maybe, not necessarily innovation itself, but really just the progress and, application of that innovation is just much quicker than anywhere else I've ever been.
Any bills in that?
Just one. So I think, a lot of people, when they grow up in one country, they think the rest of the world is like them. And obviously with China, or maybe not obviously, but for China, there's quite a lot of differences and different contexts. So one thing is that you've got in the West or in North America or Western Europe, over 100 years of like retail history. So one of the main differences is you have many stores and shopping malls and traditional retail infrastructure. And China did not have that. Just a few years ago, there were only 2,000 Adidas stores in China. You might think that is a lot of stores, but when you think about the size of the population and the number of people who like Adidas in the country, the coverage is not there. So we've had innovation is almost a leapfrog effect in that there wasn't really a choice. In order to serve the consumer demand, e-commerce has had to take off. So the U.S. e-commerce, you've gotten a 1% increase every year for the last 15 years. So 15% of retail in the U.S. is e-commerce versus over 30% in China. And then with COVID, the interesting thing is that the U.S. has caught up. So just in the last year, U.S. e-commerce has gone from 15% to 30%. That's that's 15 years worth of increase in just 1 year. And China has also grown. But there's different contexts. It's very important to understand some of the historical reasons for the current innovation that you see in China.
Yeah, maybe I can add probably 3 or 4 points. I think that the first one is we see a dramatic change in the past 5-10 years. Is like China tech, we used to say is more like a market driven, which means because China has the huge population, so the lots of service like Arnold, like a takeaway and delivery service. I think they benefit from the population we have, basically the massive market we have. But if we look at in past 5 years, I think everybody can really feel that. I think we spend more and more effort on kind of exploring or developing the technology, more like hardcore technology behind everything, like the chip, the AI, the big data technologies, the 5G or even 6G. I think we see more technology-driven product or service kind of developing in China. The second is, I think it's really China style is, I think, and some speaker also mentioned, is how the role of the Chinese government kind of play in the industry. It's kind of it's controversial. Somebody says the government is just probably spend just over impact industry. But if you look at another side, is if you look at, for just give example like a EV, we have like a NIO, we have Xiaopeng, we have Nishtha, which are the top three EV car manufacturer in the market. But recently I talked to many other like local government. You can really feel like how all these local government, even already have top three, but all the government people, they are kind of desperately, they want to talk to the second level of the EV car manufacturers, like Weimar or several others. I think all the province, or even like every city, they are compete with each other to kind of embrace, to welcome the EV companies or auto-driven technologies, and to move to their cities. So the government spend lots of money and resources to kind of push everything on forward. The third one, I would say is how I think talking about like for example AI. I personally think if you look at the technologies of the AI technologies, I don't think China is kind of taking is a lead of the global AI industry. But if you look at the application level, I think the kind of Chinese philosophy is they learn the technology, maybe it's like the next day they're going to think about how to apply the technology into the different industry and how to monetize the technologies. So that's why you see so many AI powered applications in China. I think applications are ahead of the global industry. The last one is also interesting. Is if you look at lots of examples. I think the Chinese entrepreneurs, they are more like the platform kind of mindset instead of product mindset. Meaning, if you look at like Facebook, is still like a social. It's just in past over 10 years, people consider Facebook as social networking. People consider Twitter as social media. People consider WhatsApp as like a social chatting tools. But if you look at the Chinese examples, like everyone, WeChat, even like Weibo, is once they build their kingdoms in the vertical kind of sectors, they quickly they're going to move to every corner and become a platform, and they want to conquer everything and compete with all the competitors in each vertical market. So I think this is very different from kind of Western technology industry. Thanks.
Absolutely, that's very interesting, Ganglu, because just yesterday we were having an offline catch-up with the folks on Clubhouse based in Shanghai, and there was a deep discussion on how to build relationships and how China innovation is different versus, or let's say ways of working in the China ecosystem is different from other countries. And one of the examples came to my mind, inspired by you, is also for example, who's introduced you? We all know about Guangxi, and it's a huge topic, but who's introduced you? Is that credible? It's not just that you have a great pitch, but you should have the right person, a credible person to introduce you and know the system and be the voice to take that forward, right? So David, any more build on that, on China innovation ecosystem different from the West?
Yeah, I think build on that is the things are moving fast here, and it moves fast because there's a very little belief in the established status quo. When I came here in 2003, the leading e-commerce site is eBay and Amazon, and in 2010 it's Taobao, and right now. Even though Taobao is still predominant, but then platforms like Pinduoduo came out of almost nowhere in the past 5 years, and it's eating Taobao's lunch, and then it's not stopping yet. TikTok and just recently went public the Kuaishou. That's pushing the e-commerce in a new directions. So just in the gap of 17 years, there are already 3-4 generation of e-commerce popping up in China. And if you look at the rest of the world, everybody is still stuck with Amazon. And I think that part of the entrepreneurship is distinguished from the rest of the world is there's not that much belief in the status quo. And any big company has their weakness. And every new venue will be tried. So, and I think this is one thing we're starting to see spreading from China to other places. If we look at the development of the internet company in Southeast Asia, they are taking on this same characteristic. Uber is no longer operating in Southeast Asia. It's Grab, and then let's go Jack. And if we look further into Africa, the same kind of pattern really emerged, starting to e-commerce side in every countries, e-commerce side in, well, a lot of time in every capital cities.
Got it.
That's that everybody can do it attitudes, not just, oh, well, Jack Ma is so big, let's not touch his territory. But Jack Ma is so big, let's take a piece of his pie.
That's interesting. Just to build off and go deeper into this conversation, there is an amazing question lead on from this about China innovation, how it's different. A question from Sanjeev in the audience. And this is something Dirk Hai can start if it's okay. What is the venture capital network that supports this scale of innovation in China, different from the West? What is the best way to get connected with this network? Dirk Hai, is it okay?
Wow. I think that there are a lot of different ways, actually. The key thing is to find people who are already experienced. There's a lot of people who want to be VCs. With regard to what others have said about the credibility of the intros, that is super important. And I'm sure that others on this panel can tell very concretely from the point of view of the VC what would be what would be important in what they're looking for. I believe William would be great for that.
Sure. I think so I've been doing venture capital or investment in China for about 25 years now in tech, which is a long time, I guess. So you have to kind of remember that there's the international VCs, and these international VCs both have China funds and US dollar funds. And then there are local China funds. 70+%, the last number I saw was 72% of venture capital funding comes from the government. And most of those government funds, those government-backed funds or funds that have government renminbi in them cannot invest in international companies. So the first thing to understand is that a lot of the government-backed funds, and this is not central government, but districts, cities, and provinces, very much local development funds, is driving a lot of the investment. Now, if you look at the top 30 or 50 funds, it hasn't changed that much. But at least 1/3 of those top 30 funds in China are, have international brands like Sequoia or Matrix or Lightspeed, so they are very much localized, but with an international understanding, and they generally have both renminbi and dollar. The funds rate, just last point, the amount of money is difficult to fathom. China is the VC actually for 1 year surpassed the U.S. in terms of the amount of funding. So there's a huge amount of money. And because of that, funds have grown, just as in the U.S. But funds have grown from $100 million fund to $500 million fund. Now you have $1 billion plus funds. So check sizes have grown and competition has grown. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that for most VCs, the first institutional check coming in is $4, $5, $6, $7, $10 million, and that's a big change. Before, institutional VCs used to get involved at $1 or $2 million, but now that's taken care of by friends and family and angels, and actually a lot of people are just self-funding their Kickstart. So the stages have all kind of moved later. But for international, I don't know where you're coming from, but if you are raising for an international company from China, you really need to focus on companies that actually are allowed to invest in you. And those would be the more international players.
Thank you, William. I think, Sanjeev, if you want to get connected with William or anybody on this panel, I'm sure you can follow up with them by following on Clubhouse or LinkedIn or the information in their bio. So moving on, we all know, obviously, with the COVID recovery happening all over the world, so we have to stay positive and things are recovering. So with the COVID recovery, in the last 3 to 6 months, China's retail tech e-com innovation has lit a fire, under this recovery. China has registered a triple-digit growth during Q4. The GDP is looking positive, and obviously it's an inspiration to collaborate further for many, many other countries. So, question to the audience, to the panelists is that what is that one major reason that is enabling this acceleration, and how can this be further leveraged, this COVID recovery and innovation acceleration? What's enabling this? Anybody who wants to go first?
Oh, I guess I'll go. I think China has been preparing for this since 2003 because of the SARS outbreak. That's when e-commerce really started to take off in China. And all the logistics, all the systems, all the payment systems, all of that has really gotten to a level where essentially everybody has it, and it just works. And so when the country had to shut down, it really didn't impact people too much. You could get home delivery same day within a few hours. You can't do that in most of the world. Right? And you can pay without using, paper money, without using credit cards. And, a lot of these things have been built over the last decade. And it's going to take the other parts of the world a little bit longer to catch up to that. If you look at what Amazon has done over the last year, they've hired 500,000 people to try to do some of these things that have been built in China. So I think that's one of the reasons why retail has really done pretty well, or online commerce has done very well in China.
Got
Just
it.
to add on that. Oh yeah, sorry, Ashley. Do you wanna comment first?
No, you go ahead. Build on that.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment on or add on. I mean, very practically speaking, right? So we discussed that e-commerce has grown all over the world due to COVID, and what just Alvin mentioned. China has all the infrastructure, and Alvin even mentioned Amazon. When you look at Amazon, most of the sellers and most of the products are still from China, whatever, if you buy it in the US or if you buy it in Europe. And so, China is growing because, the demand is growing for e-commerce products, for products from China in general. I think that's just kind of practically speaking in terms of the export side of things. And, the second thing that I would say is also the consumer kind of attitude has travel and spend their money overseas for different brands. You see a huge spike in entrepreneurs in China building their own brands in the consumer space and many different spaces. And, these brands are able to grow within 6 to 12 months to hundreds of millions of RMB in revenue. I've personally met a couple of these entrepreneurs in Hangzhou or different places. It's all, of course, built around the Alibaba ecosystem, etc. And, this is also fueling the local consumption and kind of changing the habits. And that, of course, fuels the economy and the growth eventually.
Got it. Who wants to build on that?
one trend you see in the West is big e-commerce companies like Amazon, and I am not an Amazon expert by any means, but basically, have a platform and providing a break between brands and their customers. So Amazon wants to control the customer and not the brand. If you look at China, it's been that way for quite a long time, although Alibaba's positioned as more open. They still really push brands to connect through Alibaba, and they make it pretty difficult for brands to go direct to consumer, to understand who their consumers are and to pull data. So one of the opportunities that we've seen, or one of the trends that we've seen, is a lot of the brands are trying to build those direct relationships with their customers, and they're trying to leverage social. The challenge is that the social is also controlled by the very platforms that are creating a barrier between them, the brands and their customers. So this sort of push me, pull me has been quite interesting to watch as e-commerce has taken off. There's a lot of these Chinese brands coming up, being built, and they're being built based on really direct personal relationships between the brand and their end customers. You can call it social commerce, but it's probably the leading, China's leading player in the world in social commerce or direct-to-consumer brands versus, and one of the reasons why is maybe because at least traditionally selling on Facebook or Instagram was against the terms of service. So the model is just quite different in China.
All right, welcome everybody again to We the Future Club, where we're talking about how to tap into China's latest digital trends with some of the most interesting, experienced speakers in mainland China. And we've got it going all day. So we have an amazing agenda, really. Ashley, can you go over the agenda and then I'll go back to resetting the room?
Absolutely. So just now we are in the first section of our full day event, and we're talking about China's digital lifestyle, innovation, and trends. Then we're going to go into the next 2-hour session on Chinese consumers in 2021. The next session is going to be about China's digital marketing. Then we're going to go into new retail and e-commerce. And finally, we're going to wrap up this 12-hour day with luxury and experiences in China.
All right. Thank you, Ashley, for lending your experience and being one of the top KOLs in the digital space. And Nishtha, your experience in leading a lot of WeChat groups on digital transformation in China to making this day really productive for everybody. So welcome again to We the Future Club. I'm Peggy Liu. And if you'd like to learn more about China, mainland China, if you'd like to hear about China, Africa, even China, Brazil, or China, UAE, if you're interested in what's going on in China's sustainability trends, if you're interested in moving to China and would like to ask people in China questions about how to do that, just follow the people here on stage, especially the ones with green beanies. We're moderators for you today. And follow me, for example, if you click on my profile at the bottom, for those of you who are new to Clubhouse, you'll see Instagram and Twitter handles. Mine is Shanghai Peggy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, WeChat. And if you're already in China or working with China and you're on WeChat, then please follow me on WeChat or click or just use my QR code, which I've used as the profile picture, and you will join a community of people on a WeChat group that are digital attendees for today's group. And so we have 43 people in that group alone. We have different groups for different topics, as well as different rooms that are all coordinating in the background to share humanized stories with mainland China to the West. So we have about 700 people now in just the last week and a half signing up to share their stories, just like Alvin and Jan and Gang and Dakai and William and David here, to really give the scoop, the real scoop that you may not hear on media, in Western media, about what it is really, really like to live in China. And my own background is that I started one of the leading environmental organizations back in 2007, and I've really seen China become a new country every 5 years, every 5 years. And new digital innovations, new consumer behaviors have been adopted in 12 months, whether it's bike share, in 12 months everybody was using it, or going digital and cashless society, in 12 months everybody was using QR codes and scanning WeChat Pay and Alipay. And I find, to one of the speakers' points, the implementation at scale is an innovation in itself. So implementing so that over 113 cities with more than 1 million people each can use something at scale and not break, whether it's tracking coronavirus, really, COVID-19 people, and warning people about staying home and quarantining, that is really an innovation in itself. In medtech, every single aspect of living in China has been touched by the wide-scale changes and innovation from Chinese people domestically, but also a hybrid of international ideas, technologies that are really localized for Chinese context, Chinese characteristics. So what I'd love to do is open up the stage. So for anybody who wants to ask a question, feel free to DM us, of course, directly, but you can also now raise your hand and we will bring up people. If you have a question, put it in your bio at the top so we can sort of see who to bring on. And then when you've answered or asked your question, we're going to move you back into the audience just to keep the stage a little clear for the moderators to wade through. And again, welcome to We the Future Club and Tapping into Digital China's latest trends day. So I'm going to ask the speakers and people who join us on stage, what are stories about how individual consumer life, citizen life, people, normal people's lives, ordinary people's lives, how has that changed with the rapid innovation in digital China? So think about the end consequence result to the normal everyday life of a person living in mainland China. So I'll open it up to everybody.
Thanks, Peggy. So just to confirm, you open up the floor, right? Everybody in the audience can raise their hands.
Yes, and please do add your question or your comment or the story that you want to share to the top of your Clubhouse bio. And please keep your remarks to a minute, remarks and question to a minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. I think that's a great lead-in question, talking about tech, innovation, ecosystem. Peggy, if you don't mind, could you double-check the hand raising seems off still? If somebody can switch it on, then audience can raise hands. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been turned on, I guess, now. So moving on, Peggy's point about everyday life. So, in theory, we already know China is innovating. Let's talk about practice. In practice, the ordinary people, the Chinese people, everybody who's living on the ground in China, how are they experiencing innovation? Any story, anything which has surprised you and that aha? Anybody who wants to go in the audience, I think we're just going through the audience. If anybody in the speaker want to go with a quick story before we pull up the audience while I'm doing that live. Look, hi.
One of the things I think is hard for people in the West to grasp is how quickly the adoption of new apps that have really a large set of features gets shared and adopted. Clubhouse has hit the West in a major way, and it's actually quite a simple user interface. It has very few features, and in contrast, the apps in China are typically loaded with features. Whether it's discussion apps, and there's been some discussion that there has been a year before Clubhouse, similar interactive voice chat things in China like Dijua, but there's also in the space of music apps, not just Spotify type things, but much more live, where people are signed on and they are interacting with the audience. and playing music, performing to the audience, and they're speaking. And there is an incredible amount of life within these apps. They have many more features than the ones that are popular in the West. And if you put so many features in the apps the West is using, it tends to be that users are I don't know if it's too intimidated or there's too much complexity. And that's why things like Clubhouse end up being very simple. But in China, people seem to be very happy to just very quickly latch on to these new features that give you interactivity, that give you shopping within the app and so on. It's really quite amazing.
Thank you, Dakai. Let's hear from our guest, Jack. Jack, under a minute, what is your observation or experience in this rapid digital innovation and acceleration in the year of the ox?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jack. So I just introduce a little bit background. So actually, I have been living in Shanghai for 10 years. Then I moved to Europe since 2017. So, but then I back to China last year. So I can, from my personal daily life, I can see the biggest change that has impacted everyday's daily life. For example, especially the delivery system. When every day when I was in Berlin, so actually. The daily life, I have to go to the supermarket almost every day, and the delivery, you can even order the food, all these things. It's still not that convenient, but in China, I think almost you can see how this delivery system from the all these like Alma or this Mehta. So everybody use this to change everyone's daily life. And especially from this, not only tier 1 city, but from the even tier 3 and tier 4 city, it's the even this in this large company. Sorry, man.
No problem, Jack. I think Jack touched upon a very interesting aspect. If anybody wants to go deeper in this digital lifestyle and innovation ecosystem, any difference we see in lower tiers, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. Paula, do you have any opinion on that, or anybody else on the lower tiers?
Hi guys, thanks for having me. My questions and comments actually are more about the previous topic on innovation in China and why China has such speedy innovation. So I'm not sure if my comment is still relevant.
No problem. We are discussing the same topic, but do you have any experience or story around that, or is just a question for now?
Well, I was 10 years in China, and I'm actually an academic, and I'm strategic director for an AI company. And we're actually exploring coupling and decoupling with technologies in China currently. But my observation from living 10 years in China, and the reason why they're quite speedy in terms of their collectivism, their mindset, they're working together, united as one, and they're always into like innovation encouraged, failure tolerated, which we don't have in the Western society. It slows us down because we're fragmented and individual mindset. Secondly, I think the Chinese on the ground are extremely curious and open to starting business. Thirdly, I like their mindset because they believe in profitable sustainability. So like it's profitable sustainability, not the other way around like the Westerners think. Fourthly, their supply chains. Chinese love to monopolize supply chains, whether it's vertical, horizontal, reverse, forward. It's in their DNA. They want to monopolize these supply chains so they can cost effectiveness and have control. What else? Yes, that was my notes from the previous conversation.
Thank you so much, Paula. We'll go ahead.
Paula, since you mentioned you work in AI, I believe, one of the biggest drivers of this increasing speed of innovation in China is simply based on the fact that you have compounding effects of a more and more digitized world, and foremost, a big data pool, that it exceeds anything available in the rest of the world. And for those of you who have read the book AI superpowers by Kai-Fu Lee, the former Google China CEO and now Innovation Ventures head, and also one of the most recognized AI researchers globally for a long time. And he said that an inferior algorithm, an inferior code that works on the bigger big data pool will always beat a superior algorithm that works with a smaller big data pool, meaning no matter if China has the best algorithms in AI or Google has their DeepMinds, but if you have the bigger data pool, you will eventually succeed, and you have so many data points that machine learning can pull out the best possible combinations out. So I believe that is kind of these compounding effects are by far the big driver of what we're observing in the market.
I'd like to introduce, this is Peggy, I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine, Brian Wong, who will be joining us during the next session too as well, but thank you for popping on.
Thanks, Peggy.
Brian.
It's great to hear the conversation. I was just kind of listening in, but I couldn't resist but to add something to what Jack said earlier on how this is how the digital economy of China is affecting the common people. Sorry, I have a bad connection here. Are you able to hear me?
It's a little shaky for me. I don't know if it's just me, but just speak into the phone as much as possible.
Okay. Great. So one other observation I think is important to point out is it's the third and fourth tier cities that have benefited from a lot of this digital transformation, but also the rural areas. And in particular, I think that what makes China quite unique in its journey is how it's really created a system that is inclusive for the larger society. Practically every aspect or area of the country has benefited from the digital sort of transformation. And in the rural areas specifically, there's a phenomenon of e-commerce. At Alibaba, they call it the Taobao villages, but it's also expanding with companies like JD and Pinduoduo and others. But it's really, there's two aspects. One is access to products. Rural areas traditionally were really cut off from the mainstream economy. So even buying a simple, branded toothpaste like, Crest toothpaste or getting P&G products was very difficult because the access was very limited, both not only logistically, but just even being aware that these products existed and then being able to get them at a reasonable price. Some of the highest priced fake products are actually sold in rural areas, not urban areas. So on the one hand, rural communities now are able to access the mainstream product selection like everyone else in the big cities and enjoy a higher quality of life as a result. But more importantly, I think another area that's really benefited is the rural communities being able to sell their products to a larger audience. Traditionally they depended on wholesale sort of, players that would buy at a low price and sell at a much higher price to the urban markets and sometimes international markets. Now these rural farmers can actually sell their products directly to the urban cities and also to end consumers and capture a much higher profit margin. And so at Alibaba alone, the number of jobs created in rural areas has been close to 7 million jobs created in over $100 billion in gross merchandise value. And in addition to that, if you look at the income generated by an individual who has nothing higher than a high school education, maybe just a middle school education, that person's per capita income that uses e-commerce is actually equivalent to a college-educated urban, worker in the cities. And so this wealth gap is actually being addressed by e-commerce because of the opportunities it affords people in remote areas thanks to technology. And I think that is a lesson that the world can actually study and learn from as a development model for poverty alleviation. So I just wanted to share that.
That's a really good point. I'm actually just typing that up to share on my social media. And I encourage everybody listening to type in any sound bites that you find valuable and share them with the world on your social media. Ashley is also going to be editing this and publishing sound bites, but please do. That's a wealth of information in really every single one of these speakers. I have known what they do, and many of them I've known for over a decade. And you really just can't even pay to get access to, for example, Brian Wong's experience at Alibaba as somebody who graduated from Stanford, right, Brian? And you grew up in Northern California?
No, Swarthmore.
Oh, Swarthmore. Okay. Oh, your wedding was at Stanford, though. So I got confused there. So, you cannot pay to get access to the knowledge of, let's say, Alvin, who has really been on the forefront of mobile innovations and now virtual reality innovations at HTC Vive. So please do join us in asking these speakers a question. Follow them here on Clubhouse by clicking on their icon and hit follow with the bell. And hit a bell for all of the moderators, so you'll get access to more rooms in the future where we bring these people on stage. And again, we have at least 12 hours of really incredible speakers with a wealth of information coming. So please do raise your hand, follow us, put your question in your bio, in your Clubhouse bio at the very top, so we can tee that up. And actually, Keith, you asked a really great question about how COVID times have really spurred innovation. So do you want to come and speak?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Happy Chinese New Year. I'm from Malaysia anyway. I'm Keith here. Thanks for bringing up. So the question here is that we all know that China is already moving really fast in innovations back then, before the COVID virus outbreak. So as we know that during the recovery of the COVID virus, people and the world actually have a new perspective of how we view distance between the people. And so my question is, is there any sign of pivoting directions on the innovations in China, especially with this speed, that is specifically happening now during the recovery of COVID virus? And that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keith. Anybody who wants to take his question in the speakers group? Well, I can just quickly share my view and then others can build on that. So great question on the COVID virus impacting speedy innovation. I think one of the learnings we've had is China's dual circulation strategy. Basically, how the Chinese government top down is spurring China's domestic demand through job creation. I think Brian made a very good point of 7 million jobs being created, for example, just in rural areas, the wealth gaps being reduced. This is not by accident. This is not just, just reacting on the COVID part, but it's a long-term 14th five-year plan strategy. But specifically in the last 12 months, there's a big emphasis on dual circulation, where the job creation, improving social security in the middle class, especially, not relying only on export, but export, import, both of that. I think that is really, really helping in the recovery. Anybody else wants to build on that? It's a great point. Okay, we can then continue.
I have a separate observation on that. I think what is actually really interesting is how China has been able to continue in light of COVID. And in contrast, we had to, I actually spent a lot of the past year putting aside my usual work in AI and other things to focus on the fact that even simple things like wearing masks, which was, immediately widely, almost universally adopted throughout China and other East Asian nations, was not being done in the US, was not being done in Europe. And 1 year ago, literally 1 year ago, this was already greatly alarming me. And so I started working on, again, translating this knowledge from China, from the East, over to the West. And I ended up having to do enormous efforts on this. We built an international team with 4 European colleagues in different countries there, and wrote a white paper and an academic paper describing 2 new AI models that we had built to show what happens if you have different percentages of the population wearing masks. And One of those models that I built was an intelligent agent-based model drawing from AI traditions that I had to make visualizable so people could take their browsers and go and watch people walking around and what happens if those people are wearing masks and if they're not wearing masks. And if 90% of people were wearing masks, then you really slowed down the spread of COVID. But if, say, only half of the people were wearing masks, instead of slowing down COVID by half, it actually has next to zero impact on slowing down COVID, right? And it took that level of thing, making tutorial videos. And this went incredibly viral in the West by May. Late April or early May, it started coming out, and it was all over every single international media you can think of. And that it took that level of effort to get people in the U.S. and Europe to understand that wearing masks was important to slow down the spread of COVID. But of course, by that time, the huge amount of damage to the economy and to public health was already done. So I think it's important to look at that side when we talk about the effect and the impact of COVID upon innovation in China being able to continue.
If we can lead on, just continue with that, Brian. If anything on what's coming up, like COVID recovery is great, but in the new year of the ox, if you look at the positives or what's coming up, how would you connect the dots on what is that the innovation ecosystem will do better on and build on in the new year of the ox? Brian or anybody else?
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just going to comment on the response, and maybe I can bridge that to the year of the ox. But one thing I will say is if you want to think about the lessons learned from COVID, the response from companies was so instantaneous when that happened. And I think that's a testament to how reactive, but also quickly these digital companies can mobilize. I remember at the end of February, Alibaba was already calling special meetings on figuring out how to utilize its platforms to address all the problems that were arising because of COVID, whether it's logistics bottlenecks, whether it was the shutdown of mom and pop shops, whether it was, the health industry needs on scanning and using AI to read the CT scans. So that was very, very impressive. And if you think about what that will lead to today, in a way, it's recalibrated organizations to think about how to operate now in this new setting. And a lot of people say, when things get back to normal, blah, 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 blah. And the reality is we may never go back to the old ways. But what that also means is we have to embrace what we have created and build on that moving forward. So a lot of the systems, whether it's the tracking, whether it's how delivery can reduce the human interaction, whether it's, the cashless mechanisms or touchless mechanisms that are created because of the digital systems, are probably here to stay and will continue. So I just think that what was really interesting was how quickly these organizations responded to the challenge. And I think, like many said, the system was sort of primed for that prior, but this was really the test.
Can anybody talk to how contact tracing works for people in the audience who may not live here on the ground? So contact tracing, with the phone, the health code, for example. So when I go into a nightclub or some of the malls now for Chinese New Year, I have to turn on Alipay or WeChat and show a green health code. Does anybody have a short story about explaining how that works for people who might not be familiar with how it works in the West?
Yeah, I think I can share a story. I remember when I think the COVID situation in China was already kind of getting much better, and then actually even events started to happen again. I think I remember maybe 4 months ago, or I kind of forgot when it was, but I was in Shanghai and I was attending a conference actually with thousands of people already, and my friends in the West, my friends in Europe, they were just thinking that this is just crazy. How is this possible? And I think, what you just mentioned, Peggy, the QR code and, these things basically contributed to the fact that they could do it. It's basically very simple. So you have multiple of these apps. Actually, I was quite confused at the beginning because it seemed like every city, every government had their own app before they actually put it into Alipay or into the systems, which also took some time, but it happened eventually. And so you have this mini program in WeChat or, Alipay or some other app, whatever. You have this, and basically when you land somewhere, when you take a train, or even when you want to go to a public place like a supermarket, you need to basically show that you haven't been within the past 2 weeks. You haven't been in a risky area. Risky area basically means that there was some COVID cases detected, and if you were not there within the last 2 weeks, you will basically have a green QR code, and that means that you can go without any issues. If you would have an orange or a red one, even, you would probably not be able to, of course, enter, but you will not be able to even travel. They will not allow you to take a plane, for example, etc. And so, this is just like the kind of simple technology of QR code that has existed in China for many, many, many years, and they put it into works very quickly and made sure that people stay safer. So yeah.
Actually, let me add a little bit to that. I think in addition to the QR code, I think the fundamental thing underneath of it is GPS and your location tracking, right? So essentially, everybody's phone is being tracked all the time. So it's a trade-off of essentially safety for privacy. Right? So all of your data is being provided, all of your location data from the phones are being provided to the government, and the government then it knows when you've left certain areas or have been in certain areas, and they're able to then certify you as being safe or not safe. And every time you get on the plane, that information is being tracked. Every time you get on a train, that information is being tracked, so that they know whether or not you've been in certain areas. So, or you've been close to other people that have known. So that system seems like it's working quite well. I think in addition to the tracing and tracking is the travel bans or the travel quarantining, right? So right now I'm on a 7-week. I'm done with first week of 7 weeks of quarantining that I have to do because I have to go to Taiwan and then from Taiwan to China. So when I went to the U.S., it took me half an hour to get from off the airport to out the door and back home. Coming back to China, it's going to take me 7 weeks in multiple hotels where I'm stuck in a room, right? And it's that kind of restriction where you prevent imported cases is, I think, one of the key things that's going to that's helping maintain the stability that they have in China right now.
And by stability, I would like to say what that really means for a person on the ground, at least here in Shanghai, where several of us live, or actually more than several of us. There's new clubs that I'm going to, and it seems like there's new clubs opening up recently, actually. Karaoke, singing, new restaurants. The restaurants are all doing really, really well right now because nobody can travel abroad. And so I feel really, really safe. I'm able to go out. Yesterday, Chinese New Year, the streets were crowded. People were outside looking for any open restaurants. And, it's just buzzing with energy here. So for me personally, I love the fact that if there's one person who comes down with COVID, they can see what bus or subway they took to which clubs and which restaurants, and they can notify everybody who might have been exposed, and then they can do, tens of thousands of COVID tests in a day or two immediately, and they can shut down neighborhoods if necessary to make sure that doesn't spread. And really, that's the only way that we're going to be able to eliminate COVID. So I think that's a really interesting innovation from China, but also just the whole system innovations around COVID, how they've worked together and how they've been able to implement it locally, but also nationwide. Again, that innovation is an IP in itself. that ability to implement is at scale is an IP in itself. Does anybody else have a reflection on innovations that came out of medtech or anything during COVID? Hi, Fabian. Welcome. Did you want to say something?
I wanted to add a comment on the contact tracing, specifically also with the QR codes, and I was already interested to hear Alvin talk about it and Jan. I've been thinking about this all, a bit, probably not enough, so that's why I still have a question. But I just wanted to clarify that I think the QR codes in and of themselves, I think, are largely essentially to put people into a list, right, and sort of check them in at a location with their passport ID, with their phone number, and their name, right? So that I think that's the large benefit of just scanning a code, is essentially checking in there and then allowing contact tracing if that is necessary, right? If somebody...
Actually, the QR code is not really the part that does the tracing and tracking. The QR code is just an easy access to the app, to the mobile app. The actual tracking and tracing is all happening in the background in the mobile systems.
Right, and that's sort of that's exactly my point, sort of. And then what I'm interested in is, is the Chinese, or okay, I hate to use the term sort of the Chinese government, but the kind of technology, or the kind of tracing through mobile phones, is that any different from the mobile phone data that any other government in the world has access to through their ISPs? Is that different here in China, or is that simply just what everybody else is using?
So I can speak to that. So we invested in a company based out of California called Lada Data a few years back, and they do tracing and tracking of people. Their customers are brands, but also city governments for traffic, for basically traffic and population movement analysis. And then when COVID came out, they were using this data, and then their customers included the state of California and the country of Mexico, Italy, Canada, Switzerland, and Ireland, and others. And so they were watching where people were and then where they went. You could see concentrations of COVID outbreaks, and then you could see where people went to, and then you could see the impact down to the building level, or down, very, very good granularity in terms of this data. The big difference is that we don't know who the people are. We have no idea. So you can't use this data to go then find the person who might have been exposed and do a test. I think that's the really big difference. So while our data from Lada Data was quite effective, you can't use it in the same way as you can for example, in China.
There are also a fair amount of the apps for contact tracing in the West that are further crippled by not using, or not tracking and not using some types of data, and relying more on near field and Bluetooth rather than absolute location. And that, again, is done for privacy reasons, but the trade-off is that if someone goes into, for example, an elevator, and then 3 minutes later, they're already gone, and you climb into the same elevator, there's no detection of that because there's no absolute location information. And so that does not help control the spread as much.
Okay.
I think if you look at the content tracing, it's really... it tells a really different story of the innovations in China and in the West. I think we have been reading about every content tracing method, technical method possible in the West, but nobody implement them. But in China, it's actually been driven by the I started to travel probably in April last year. And then initially it's very confusing. You go across you go out of Shanghai, you go into the other city, you get off the train station, the QR code is not recognized. You have to download another app, and then they have 3 different forms for you to sign. It's all about it's a massive data collection being maintained by the team, and to fit the need of the very competent, large contact tracing team in the background. It's not just technology. And I think instead of trying to figure out what the contact tracing people need, I think in the West is get into all this debate about, whether or not we can use the GPS location, whether we do these Bluetooth things. It ends up it's not helping the contact tracing team at the end of the day. So I think that discussion of content tracing is not really about giving up privacy or giving up anything. It's really about whether or not the application is designed to answer the real needs, and how the technology can be integrated to do that. And then roll this out as fast as possible and fix it along the way. That's another part of the innovation pattern here.
I think the interesting thing that I'm hearing, and I think what other countries, can't really learn from necessarily because their systems don't work this way, but the cooperation between central government, local governments, and technology companies that are competing against each other in the private sector, the cooperation among all of those during this time to combat COVID is what is really remarkable.
Can I add in a little bit?
Jason, Yanten?
Okay,
yes, hi. And how do you say your name? Yanten, okay.
Here in Singapore.
Welcome.
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Yanten. I'm based here in Singapore. So I'm doing typically MarTech stuff. I used to live in Beijing from 2008 to 2015 myself, and we still have an office in Beijing. I just want to add on a bit on the contact tracing bit where in Singapore we did implement it to a certain extent. But I think that part that I think Fabian, right, was mentioning earlier on was also the key difference between how telco companies, because I think one important aspect of that is also the telco data. Typically GPS and stuff like that from a technological standpoint is not the most accurate. Actually, it's the mobile signals that are sending it out that are the most crucial. And I think in China, they have done it tremendously well. In other parts of the country, it is done and it is used. However, having said that, it's kind of sensitive in terms of from a privacy perspective, but they do use the data. Like I believe William was talking about it earlier on as well. It's actually pretty integral in the way that the data is used. Not only what people has given out their data in terms of privacy, but actually in terms of mobile networks, that's actually a very crucial part of detecting. And I think combining it with various kind of we talk about from central government to all the way to technology companies like Peggy mentioned, it's actually amazing that that entire ecosystem helps to, elevate in such a massive country. Think of it like in China, it's like huge numbers of people that we will be able to detect and actually, close down certain areas where there's cases and stuff like that, which is pretty amazing. And the workflow between and the protocol is actually quite amazing. Having worked in China myself to bring it all into execution and operations. And actually, I wanted to also, maybe I will just leave it, I'll add on a little bit on some of my questions as well to share with the people later on. Let's continue on this MedTech first.
Jason, did you want to say something on COVID specifically? Otherwise, I'm going to ask.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Well,
and then Miriam, you're next.
Sure. In the tranquility, peace, and joy in South Bay suburb of Silicon Valley. And it is certainly, we're in semi-lockdown. But today, I celebrated with my family having a beautiful, delicious dim sum lunch sitting outdoors in a Chinese restaurant in South Bay. That was delightful because we were kind of fully shut down for quite a while. And I was reflecting quite a bit. And I'm sure that most of us have done our contribution and reflection and then we have found silver linings despite the macro and micro pains that we've gone through over the past year. One reflection is looking at the mainland Chinese culture and then the American culture. Now, as a global Chinese American, I've been very blessed to, like you. By the way, it's good seeing you and Alvin and William here again, guys. It's been a long time. So having co-founded and exited from at least one Chinese company, investments, etc., the American culture is very freedom-oriented, independent-minded, okay, which is good and bad because some of us are a little bit defiant in following government orders here. But being Chinese and American in one package, like you guys, it's a little bit easier to implement, and also given the governmental systems in China. The good news is that we are seeing finally kind of having crossed the chasm a little bit as an uptick, and the vaccine distribution is getting in place throughout the whole country. Of course, it's not evenly distributed across all the states, but there are quite a bit of good signs here. Now, personally, based on what I see, and I sit on the Global Advisory Council in the World Chinese Economic Summit, plus other things that I do that relate to China. And I was very lucky to have attended I've been a B20 member, which is pretty much the official G20 dialogue forum with the global business community. And I've gone through the China part, which was very interesting, very entertaining. I met Jack Ma and a whole bunch of other people because Xi Jinping threw in a lot of big guns in there. I think overall, I am both cautiously optimistic and pragmatic. I'm actually very excited about 2021, guys. I think 2021 overall, despite the pain that we all went through, is going to be an extraordinary year. I'm here to help create a greater pie, bigger pie, so each one of us could participate in terms of contribution and get some reward from that. So,
Jason, can I ask you to make sure to add me on WeChat so I can put you into our speaker coordination groups? We have about 700 or more people now in the background with experience who can speak on these types of rooms. So please do make sure that you add me on WeChat Peggy at add me on WeChat at Shanghai Peggy so that we can
Shanghai Peggy. Got it.
Yes, Shanghai Peggy, one word. It's also my handle here on Clubhouse and Instagram, Facebook, etc.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that includes everybody here in the audience who may not be a speaker right now, but we have so many China topic rooms that we're doing constantly. We did a China Africa room that lasted 4.5 hours, and we were trying to close it after 2 hours. The first two exponential China speed rooms went for 12 hours each, and we're just doing so many China Brazil, China UAE, China sustainability, moving to China, welcoming you to China. I mean, all sorts. We're going to February 25th we'll be doing one with Radii China. That's Brian Wong's digital magazine about hip culture in China, written in English. And we're going to be doing one on hip hop. I believe we're going to be having the producer of Higher Brothers. Is that right? Higher Curry? Brian, am I misspeaking?
He's a producer. I don't know that it's only Higher Brothers, but yeah, he's done some work with them.
So a Chinese hip hop producer. And maybe what I'll do is I'll play a little bit of Bohan Phoenix Jala in the background while I talk. Jala is like add spice, so that's his first.
Chinese no need to remind me a little bit different on my side. Jala. Wake up and heat up the kanji. Chinese no need to remind me.
So bilingual hip rap is now a thing. So thanks to Radii for introducing me to Bohan and the whole genre of bilingual rap. So we'll be having that on February 25th. Follow Brian for sure, myself, if you're interested in that topic. On the 18th, we'll be hosting in this club, We the Future, really remarkable person who has essentially 30 years of the development of China and how it's affected global development. Jonathan Wetzel, the co-founder of McKinsey China. So follow myself as well as this club where we're going to be hosting Jonathan in a conversation with Mark Macaluso, and then we'll be opening it up on stage. On February 23rd, we'll be having a conversation with Kevin Liu, who is a Milken Institute, a Yale and US, a World Economic Forum YGL, and the chairman of Asia at Partners Group, a very large investment fund. He'll be talking about capital flows around the world from China and into China. So that one will be really, really a lot of inside-only stories, backroom stories, green room stories. A lot of the stories that you're hearing on Clubhouse, you will not be able to Google and search. So I highly recommend that you follow everybody on stage, especially the people with green beanies. We have a calendar of China-based topics that we can share with you if you just message me at WeChat Shanghai Peggy or Instagram, Twitter Shanghai Peggy, and follow Facebook. You'll be getting a wealth of these rooms. And again, I encourage you, if you have lived in mainland China, if you have worked with mainland China, please do use this platform to share your stories. And with that, I'm going to ask a good friend of mine from the World Economic Forum, Lady Mariam Jameh, to talk a little bit about the ordinary person, the girl who is interested in learning about tech and what she's done in China and abroad. So welcome, Mariam. Great to see you here.
Well, Peggy, thank you so much. I actually just, I'm not going to bed just because of you. So thank you so much for having me. I mean, I'm always impressed with the work you do across the world, but also, your kindness and your compassion and empathy to include, people like us in conversation like this. So thank you so much for having me. I think one of the things I just would like to add a little bit on what all the speakers talk about is, the work we've been doing in China, but also, like you said, the ordinary people. So we've been really trying to get young women and girls to learn how to code. My first experience going to China was in 2009, when we started to look into the difference between, what's happening in Africa and China. And so my role is to bring the positive narratives across the world, not just focus on negativity, because if you don't know what's happening in China and Africa, sometimes we have a very narrow mind conversations around it. But I was very impressed in bringing this cross-cultural communication, but also making sure people understand that, the relationship with Africa and China, it wasn't just, building roads and coming to our continent and taking our resources, but it was more to build the capacity and exchange and invest. So, I've been lucky to meet people like you and Brian on the call, where, we have a lot of Chinese investment in Africa, but also we have, way of learning from each other from both continents. So, and that led me to get young women and girls from China, and we were the first organization across the world to go in China to teach girls how to code. And I think the bias we had as a society was that, we think every single girl growing up across the world have access to digital skills. And then I started working with a couple of governments, 21 governments across the world to look into the policies around STEM subjects. But when we talk about STEM, it's kind of like a word that everyone think they know about, but no one decodes science and technology and engineering and mathematics and art and design, because most of us are not lucky to have high educations. But I think one of the things we managed to do is to leapfrog and really decode the information in a way that the ordinary person growing up across the world can have access to it. So many people don't have access to digital skills across the world. Like 50% of the world don't have access to the internet. I sit on the board of the World Wide Web Foundation with Tim Berners-Lee, who's the founder of the web. And one of our biggest problem right now is how do we connect the rest of the world with the internet. And so when I went to China, I started getting the girls to learn how to code. We're now in 69 countries, but I'm talking about marginalized girls who will not have access to education. They're going through different traumas across the world. The world has forgotten about them. we're just focusing on we can't just talk about society when we don't think about the work, for example, you're doing, Peggy, around, giving people food and helping people understand about climate change issues and food. Food is one of the biggest issues right now we have. So that's why your organization is changing lives across the world. So, and I think that I just want to make this last point that I think this sort of groups the talk conversation we're having right now, I think maybe we should bring it down a little bit to the ordinary person, because most of us are privileged to have connections and networks and money and things we can have access to. But I think what COVID-19 has definitely showed us is that we're on the same boat. We used to travel a lot and meet people and go to Davos and go to places like that. But now we all, stuck in our houses and clubhouses and things like that. So I think moving forward, post-COVID-19, we should think about a little bit more about the young girls and the boys. We have 26,000 of them right now across the world. Before COVID-19, I spent my time in refugee camps. Those people, they do grow up and they become somebody. I know we all think about capital and money and IPOs and things like that. But I think the world cannot be a better place if we don't get people to join our conversations. My girls need to have a space in places you guys are. So thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much.
Miriam. Yay! It's so great to see you. And definitely we're going to feature Miriam as one of our speakers in the next China Africa room. And please, again, follow us and message us if you're interested in sharing your China stories in future China topic rooms. I'm going to say goodbye for now because I've got to go to Chinese near lunch, but I'm going to leave it in the good hands of Ashley, George, Nishtha, and all the speakers who continue on for the rest of the day. I'll be back after brunch, and my QR code will just be sitting here silently with my second device. So if you want to join the WeChat groups, just scan the QR code in my profile pic, or just message me and I'll connect with you in the back. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ashley, for being the lightning rod to pull this day together.
Thank you so much, Peggy, for everything. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's move on and wrap up this section with one more question to our great panelists here. And the question is, what is China's innovation? How does China's innovation affect global innovation? Anybody on stage, please start. Let's share and end this section on China's digital lifestyle, innovation, and technology on high note.
I can perhaps speak to that. So one thing that if you're joining us from the West Coast, you might not understand is that one of the side effects of Chinese investment in the U.S. tech getting a bit blocked is that investment funds from China started to focus, and corporates started to focus on investing elsewhere, especially Southeast Asia and India, and even South America. So there's the case of 99 in Brazil. It's kind of like a Uber or Didi of Brazil, and Didi, which is the Uber of China, or Uber is the Didi of the rest of the world. They invested in 99, and they basically parachuted a little over 50 engineers into Brazil and rebuilt the entire system for 99 from the ground up, and really took that company to the next level. And based on that and their experience, 99 performed very well. And 1 year later, Didi acquired the company. And so what you're seeing and what you saw until recently in India, or you're still seeing in India, is Chinese investment, but not just Chinese investment, also Chinese tech, empowering or powering local leaders, local companies to then lead in markets. So 60 plus of the top 100 apps in India until very recently were Chinese owned. But of the remaining, many of them, although local companies, were powered not just by Chinese money, but also by Chinese technology and engineering. So it's an interesting thing to note. This has been a big trend. We'll see how it continues with some walls going up in certain countries. But this has been a huge driver for Southeast Asia, South Asia, and to some extent South America, Latin America.
Wonderful. Thank you, William. And any of our speakers here would like to give the tips on technology, digital lifestyle for 2021 in China in particular? Please jump in.
I would like to just emphasize that addressing real market needs is super important. Of course, this is true everywhere, but in China, the success in tech innovation, specifically in my areas of expertise of AI, it's really important to look at the pain points. And I'll just give an example that I've in China, as in some other places, there's a real demographic change problem with an aging population, lower reproduction rates, contributing to an excess of senior citizens, and they need care. And one of the things that you see in China is that people really move to apply these advanced technologies, AI, robotics, and so forth, to addressing those kinds of pain points. They're not necessarily always the latest, sort of sexy social media stuff, although there's plenty of that going on in China. But there are real needs where there's not going to be enough young humans to both drive the economy and to take care 24/7 of the elderly. And when you are in China, you just see so many people that are actually working to address those kinds of practical problems. It's their own parents that they're going to have to worry about. And this is really something that is wonderful to see. I think that the other thing is translational applications should be increasingly important. We saw Alibaba pioneer that. Our own work pioneering things like Google Translate or Microsoft Translate or Baidu Translate was targeted at that. China is an enormous innovative system with enormous human capital and talent and willingness to move forward. And the more that we can use technology and human relations to bridge that and to help transfer knowledge back and forth, the more progress we'll make as a planet.
Beautiful. Anybody wants to build on that? And any last words on the China's digital lifestyle and innovation? Any tips, any wisdom that you would like to share to end this session?
Actually, I want to add something that maybe building on what David had mentioned a little while back. But I think that the key to the success of the innovation in China really lies in the hyper competitiveness of this market. In the West, because of IP protection and governmental protection and monopoly protection and all these things, it actually reduces competition. But here, it's kind of, at least for a lot of early parts of certain markets, there's really no rules. And people just do whatever it takes to get an edge. And that edge is what creates innovation. Just like if you are on a protected island, a dodo bird can live for thousands of years and nothing's going to eat it. But, on a very open world, every animal has to evolve. And I think the innovation that's happening in China is because it's so hyper competitive. When Groupon came, within a few months, it was something like 4,000 copies of Groupon. When Uber came, there's several hundred copies of Uber. So somebody's going to be doing something a little bit better when there's that many people trying to solve the same problem. And part of it is because of the lack of IT protection. Everybody's copying each other. And the copying, in some ways, it may be not so good for the person that initially innovated, but it does speed up the ultimate solution to the end user, which then betters society. So I think that's something that that should be considered. In fact, a lot of people put down, the fact that the lack of IP protection in the early days of China, which is actually getting a lot better these days, by the way. But I think that's one of the core reasons why there was so much pace of change. But there, the lack of protection is also one of the initial reasons why for the first 10 or 20 years, China just copied people, because doing original innovation is very expensive, very time consuming. And if somebody just copies you after you've done that, then there's very little market gain from it. Whereas, if you can copy somebody that from the West or from somewhere else and be able to do it a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper, you can, have a quick market edge. So I think that was how China innovated for the first, 10, 20 years after the opening of China, after the Cultural Revolution ended. But now, you're seeing, 5G is being innovated out of China, AI is being innovated out of China, biotech is being innovated out of China. All these, in fact, even things like financial payments are now being innovated out of China. Now, the first, digital currency from a government is going to come from China. All of these things are a change in style. And I think part of it is also the legal system has gotten a lot better. In fact, I think there was some data that said out of several hundred patent infringement cases, 70 or 80% of them were won by the patent holders and in China by foreign companies. So that's actually quite a high success rate. So anyways, I don't want to hog up all the time, but I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Alvin. And with this, guys, we're going to wrap up this session. This session was about Chinese digital lifestyle, innovation, and technology. I would like to once again thank Alvin, Jan, Gang, David, William, Dirkai, and Brian for being here with us. Right now, we're moving on to the next session on our agenda. And remember that today we are having this huge Digital China Day. We're moving to the next session on Chinese consumers. But before that, I encourage all of you in the audience, if you have not done so yet. Yes, that's the groove, Peggy. Thank you. If you have not done so yet, please make sure that you follow all our speakers on stage right now. They are incredible experts. You want to follow them with a bell to be notified when they are hosting rooms and when they are speaking in rooms next time.